BTB listeners, thank you so much for checking out today's episode. Listen, if this episode inspires you, do me a favor, take 5 seconds to shoot me a like and subscribe to the podcast. There are several more exciting guests that are in the pipeline, and I just can't thank you enough for your continued support, and let's keep paying the mission forward. In today's episode, I interviewed Jerrid Oats, the Associate Athletic Director of Operations at Metro State University. Originally from Omaha, Nebraska, Jarrid shares his extensive background in athletics, detailing his early love for baseball and playing in college at Nebraska Wesleyan. He also delves into his transition from athlete to coach, including the hurdles he faced and the mentors who influenced his coaching philosophy. Jarrid reveals how he navigated his role at the Colorado School of Mines and later moved to Metro State, joining the administration team. As the listener, there's a lot of insightful attributes from Jarrid, being a former athlete and how he's applied it today in his professional career. He emphasizes the importance of discipline, work ethic, and community, both on and off the field. Jarrid also discusses the challenges and strategies for managing college athletic programs, sharing insights on fostering a supportive environment for both coaches and athletes.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby.
Welcome to the BTB Project, designed to empower listeners to identify their why and to live their best lives no matter the circumstances. My name is Kollman Gearhart. A former athlete and motivational coach, I've had the opportunity to inspire thousands through my story and help accomplish what they are built to be. You'll be encouraged by each and every episode, and let's get into it.
Yeah, when I blow up, I'ma soar high like Peter Pan. In real life, be living all my dreams. If I'm waking up, it's in a foreign land.
Being a Colorado native, I've been able to ingest myself into athletics a lot on the tennis front, but also too amongst several organizations throughout the state of Colorado. And a school that's always been close to my heart is Metro State University in Denver. Today, I have someone that has a tremendous background, not just as an athlete, but also a former coach at the Colorado School of Mines, also spending time as a baseball coach at Metro State. It brings me great pleasure to welcome Jerrid Oats to the BTB Project. Welcome, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this.
You became a highly regarded commodity based off of one of my previous conversations with a former coach at Metro State, Josh, and this is fun for me because part of the project is connecting of dots and storytelling. It always intrigues me to see what former athletes do in their career. So when I say former athlete and career, what does that mean to you in your current role?
That's a good question. Being a former athlete, I think it lines athlete as a whole up to be successful in their career, whatever path that is. I chose athletics. They may choose something else. And I think it's just the background that you get from it, the discipline, the ability to manage your daily schedules, the work ethic, those sort of things. I think that's what makes athletics amazing. And I think that's why people like to hire athletes, if it's in the business world or IT world or whatever they decide to go into, because there's a lot of things that are already in place that they don't have to teach. And that just, when they're starting, I think that's why they have success, is because they already know those things and they don't have to learn them. And they're on the step B and C, as where other people might be starting at step A in that career journey.
Being able to look back at your career, I'd love for you to share with the listeners, baseball was a part of your life. Go back to the beginning. I remember my first time I picked up a tennis racket and fell in love with the sport and went on my own journey. But when it comes to the sport of baseball, what does that mean to you? And when did you pick up the glove and the bat?
Yeah, I picked it up when I was really young, T-ball, that sort of thing. I always loved the game of baseball. I was a catcher, and I That was my thing. I wanted to be a catcher when I was playing T-ball. And they wouldn't always let me do that, but that's just how much I love doing that. I moved a lot growing up, so sports I think was a big thing for me. You always found a community. When I was young, I played as many. I played baseball, I wrestled, played football, tried to play basketball. That was pretty ugly. And I God always gave me a community, allowed me to meet people as I was moving around until, I don't know, 6th grade. I was moving every 2 to 4 years. So
Wow.
that it just gave me a way to get in on meeting friends and finding a community to be a part of when I was young. And so that was athletics has always just been that thing for me. And I snow skied. I did a bunch of things growing up. I tried to do it all. I think my parents used some of that for a babysitter too at time. Send me off to practice or a day on the slope or something while my sisters were playing volleyball, whatever it was. But it's always just been an intricate part of my life.
Yeah, I don't take lightly, Jared, what you mentioned about moving around a lot. I know that there's been a few folks that I've had on the podcast that have come from military families or two working parents that have a lot of shift in and lift in. And you said sports was really a way for you to inject yourself into community and find that team and collaboration. I'd like for you to maybe dig a little bit deeper on how much of a struggle was it for you growing up having those moves, and how did that kind of shape you into the athlete that you became?
Yeah, I think it shaped me into the person more than the athlete. I had to, when you're moving that much, you've got to go make new friends every few years, and they had to have a little bit of a personality, be a little bit willing to put yourself out there when it's your first day at school or something like that, and you're the new kid running around, and you got to go meet people and try and find friends or whatever it is. And so I think that shaped me just as a human moving forward in my life is those experiences and going through it. And I remember that 6th grade, I just moved in that semester and the school was going on a class ski trip. And I'd moved from South Dakota back to Nebraska and I learned to ski in South Dakota. And so I got there and I was like, well, hey, can I still get in on this even though it's Friday? And the teacher let me do it. And I got there and I was pretty much the only kid that knew how to ski. And just like even that just set me on a trajectory for that second semester of school. Was like I was the new kid that actually knew what he was doing on this little hill outside of Omaha, Nebraska. And those are like, I remember that to this day because it was such a big deal. And like, I don't know if I really wanted to go. I think my parents made me go because I was shy or just didn't want to, and it set the trajectory for the rest of that year.
I appreciate you letting us into the world of what it's like to try to be raised in that environment and coming to your career. Is this, when you think about your playing background in baseball, were you able to accomplish everything you wanted to as a player, or do you feel like you had some things left in the tank?
That's a good question. In playing baseball, I gave it everything I got. I definitely left everything out on the field on that side of it. I've got scars and surgeries and all of those things to show for it. What are there things that you didn't get done? Yeah, it would have been cool to win a national title and some of those things. I don't look back at my career at all with any regret. I mean, I know I did everything that I could. Literally, my last college game was the last baseball game I've ever played. And I've never had any desire to play rec league or the old man league or anything like that. I'm done. Hang it up and move on to the next phase of my life.
Yeah, it's always fascinating for me because here we are with the same synergy of being former players or athletes in our respective sports and then and going on and being a coach. I'm always curious with athletes because I know some folks that had some things that they left on the table. Maybe it was because of an injury and they weren't able to come back, or they finished that last at bat with a strikeout or a way that they didn't want to and weren't able to come back. But here you are having your career and fulfilling what you wanted to and moving on besides the national championship. I wish I would have gotten one of those too, but nonetheless, this transition to coaching, I'm curious, was it something that you've always had a passion to do what you did in baseball and know that you could give something back as a coach, or is it something that you fell into?
So I definitely fell into it. The giving back to the game, that came later. I realized that later, but I actually, when I was doing my undergrad, I thought I wanted to work in pro sport. I was a sports management major, all of those things. I left this summer. I had to go an extra semester. I didn't get done in 4 years. It took me 4.5. So I always wasn't
It's
most,
two of us.
I wasn't always the most studious, but I did an internship out in New Jersey. So I went to Nebraska Wesleyan, an old D3 school in Lincoln, Nebraska. Me and one of my teammates, we got the same internship. So we moved out to Augusta, New Jersey, and we're working for the New Jersey Cardinals, the short A for St. Louis in the New York Penn League. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I think I was there for, I don't know, maybe 10 days and thought, this is not what I want to do. And at that point, I knew I wanted to be inside the fence, not outside fence. And I called my advisor at that point, and I was like, hey, like, I'm going to finish this up. And it was a great experience. I had an amazing time living out on the East Coast for the summer and doing all those things. But I called her and I was like, this isn't what I want to do. And she was like, what do you want to do? I said, I want to coach. And she's like, well, what are the steps you need to do for that? What do you think? I'm like, I need to do grad school and I want to try and get a GA ship and spend 2 years, get my master's. It's never going to go wrong having that, even if coaching isn't what I want to do. And she had some connections at Fort Hays State with the head baseball coach there. And she connected me with him. And I was lucky enough that he was looking for a GA. And Coach Fernelli brought me on to join his staff and to start the coaching journey at that point.
And at Fort Hays, I was able to spend some time being a University of Northern Colorado guy. We were playing teams like Fort Hays and Nebraska Kearney and those more, in some cases, rural areas. When it came to that opportunity, was it a uncomfortable falling into this role, or when you were able to finally get your feet on the ground and get in front of some players and feed into them? Maybe you can share one of the first interactions that you remember having with a player from that team. And what did it mean to you to finally get your feet on the ground for that GA role?
So the first interactions with players, it was really, I was the same age as some of them and all of that. And just shortly before that, I was playing like they were. And now I had to take a whole new role and become, I wouldn't say I was an authoritative figure, because I was a GA and that, but they looked at me as a coach, and that even though I was the same age, there was actually a couple guys that were older than me. So that was an interesting transition. And the best part of that going there was I didn't know anybody. Sometimes kids stay on at their institution to coach and they played with those kids. There was definitely a line drawn between me and them because I didn't know them, they didn't know me. So that side of it was really good. The thing I probably remember the most about that starting out was sitting down with Coach Fernelli and just saying, hey, all I said is I go, what do you want me to do? What do you need me to do? And literally the only thing he said to me at that time was earn their respect. Because that's your job, is to earn the players' respect. And then that's when it kicks in at that point. All right, I'm going to throw BP before practice, and ground ball, do those things, show that you're willing to put the work in for them, that because they want to put the work in. And that's really what that first season was, just doing whatever I could on the side. I wasn't doing a ton of coaching. Coach Fernelli had a great staff in place. And I was just I was an arm and a fungo bat. And even figuring that stuff out, I'd never swung a fungo until that moment. I'd never really thrown consistent BP. So there was a lot of growth that I had to do in that first year, and had to put the work in and figure out how to hit a good fungo and things like that.
Yeah, being able to have that opportunity as a GA, and I respect the heck out of your mentor that suggested earn the respect of your players, because I've had to learn that the hard way. When I first started coaching, I remember going into a program and inserting myself, not necessarily taking into consideration what the program was, what the culture was, who the players are. I had an idea in my head before, and I didn't have much success getting that trust from the players. But the moment that I flipped the script of making it about the players and know that the players have an ability to shape the program and I'm just part of it. And that kind of selfless mentality, that's what I am hearing from you, Jared, is that you learn that quickly. When I say things like mentors and you mentioned a previous coach, where did you instill that understanding of, hey, this is the type of culture that I need to be building to be part of a program?
It was all the way back to my high school football coach. He's probably one of them that once I shifted to the thought process of coaching, like I was like, I want to be like Coach Tito. Just an amazing human being and cared about his kids, but cared about his culture and cared about the discipline and the things like that that you needed. He had a ton of success. He actually just retired from coaching of like 42 years or something like that. He was a high school coach forever. And then the coaches I played for, I've been lucky. My college coaches, the same thing. It was building culture and understanding that and the teamwork. Coach Russo and Coach Kollman and the guys I played for were just great human beings. And they had standards of discipline and they had those things. And then after I was done playing and then being able to work for Coach Fernelli that was one of the best things when I was really front side focused on coaching. Like I don't know if I could have worked for a better person to learn from than him. Just ton of success. They were national runners up 2 years before I got there. He's got over 1,000 wins now in his coaching career and he's still going at it. But those 2 seasons that I got to spend with him was just eye-opening. And that's what made me start loving the coach because I saw how much he loved his guys. And sometimes you show love by having standards and expectations and discipline, and you still love them even when you got to punish them and that sort of thing. And that's what I learned from him on that side of it. And then just a good human being. I think that's such a key thing in our world with athletics, and that is you can still be a good person and a good role model for the people that are around you.
Absolutely. And your progression as a coach, I know eventually you get back to Colorado and you end up at a school like the Colorado School of Mines. And being a Colorado guy, I always thought that school was people that were designing rockets to go up into space, not necessarily swinging bats. Or I know they have a credible cross-country program there too currently, and a football program that is fighting for national championships. But it would be great to hear about your transition into head coaching and what was the ties to the School of Mines.
Yeah, and School of Mines was just an opportunity coming out of grad school, and I ended up out there. The athletic department at that time was in a major transition. Marv K was retiring as their director of athletics. Tom Spicer was coming in. The structure at that time, the Coach Mulvaney, who I worked for, he was the part-time coach. Over half the coaches there as head coaches were part-time coaches. And Tom, when he became the director of athletics, he started changing those things, bringing in full-time people and making them full-time positions. So that's when I learned that I wanted to coach, was at that point. Because when I first got on for the first year and a half, we have a head coach who's part-time. Obviously, the trickle-down effect of funding and pay and things like that weren't there. I was a volunteer for first year and a half, and I was working like 6 jobs. I was waking up and working at the city of Lakewood in the urban park, and then going to practice and doing that in the afternoon, then going from there. And I was working the graveyard shift at a gym. I was valet parking cars on the side and on the weekends, and then working camps and doing individual lessons and all of that. And then 2 years into it, moved into an assistant equipment manager job, and that's actually what paid me. Still working full time or anything, but I was making $20,000 a year, and I thought I was rich. Did that for a couple of years, and then the transition started coming in, and they were moving all these part-time head coaches into full-time position. And Coach Mulvaney was working another job, and he could, like, financially, he could the pay of what the head coach was versus what his full-time was. So he stepped down and he put my name in to take over the program. And I was lucky enough. I was 20, I think I was 28 at that time. I was 29 when I was coached in my first game. I got to take the program over, and that's a little bit of a drinking from the fire hose there. Just 28, 29, trying to figure things out.
The ability to have the listeners understand college athletics. I had 5 coaches, Jarrid, in 4 years at the University of Northern Colorado, and these were full-time coaches, but the problem was the coaching stipend was something that on these lower revenue generating sports, it's hard to be a one-stop shop for a one salary position. So hearing what you said, the journey and multiple jobs, I tip my hat to you. And I know that there's a lot of coaches out there that are fighting to have the ability to be a college coach, but can only do it under those parameters. There you are, a little over 5 years in that role. It's a School of Mines, and it leads you to where you're at today, but you were a coach before, an administrator. Share about that next step in your coaching path and how you got to Metro.
Yeah, it was just an opportunity. The job came open here. There was definitely, at that time, the pay was a little bit better. The scholarships were better on that side of it. So it was a job. Being in downtown Denver sounded awesome. It's just, there's just especially at that time, a draw to here. They were in the planning phases of building a $24 million complex, outdoor complex with turf fields. And so that's super exciting to be able to be a part of. The director of athletics, John McDermott, that hired me here. She had a great reputation. They'd won multiple national titles in other sports. And so it was just something that just drew me down here to take this job. And yeah, and then just the university as a whole, the kids that you dealt with, we have a lot of first gen kids, and that was fun to be able to put your fingerprint on them and maybe give them a chance and an opportunity through scholarship to get a college degree or not. So that's what drew me down here.
Yeah. And the area of Denver, I completely agree. I think that it's been a place that has been highly coveted. And I know as of recently, it might have shifted a little bit, but the facilities that Metro has put together down there with the baseball fields and the tennis courts. I know that part of your transition from coach into athletic administration at Metro had to be close around the timeline of when some of those renovations were taking place. Share how you've seen the continued development of Metro, their investment in their athletic programs, and how it drew you to want to be part of the administration department.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest thing was at least from an outdoor sport standpoint, the building of the facility. We used to play on the east side of campus, and now we're on the southwest side, and going from natural grass field and that having full turf and with the weather we get and that. So that was a big draw, and it was fun to be a part of it. I can always say I won the first ever game on that field, and I also lost the first ever game on that field, and that'll never be taken away. And so that side of it is really cool. And we took different fields that were on the other side of campus that they were in good condition, they were taken care of, but they weren't like what we moved into. And then we also were able to have locker rooms and a weight room and meeting spaces and all of those things inside the building that we have. As you're entering it, you enter through those gates and walk through the building to get to all the fields. And so it really changes the recruiting ability and things like that. When you have top-notch facilities, you have a better chance of getting kids. And that was definitely part of the draw, was you have a chance to really make a difference.
Yeah, and that type of school, knowing what is almost sometimes considered a commuter school. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of people that were coming in and out, might not always live downtown. There might be Colorado folks that are driving in, and it's hard to bring people together. But the way that facility was designed, being a central hub, I just was really impressed. And unfortunately, graduating from Northern Colorado in 2007, 2008, I was on the front end of when those renovations took place. So I didn't get the chance to enjoy it, because whenever we played Metro, we would always have them come up to Greeley because there wasn't adequate courts in the Metro area to play. But with that said, to get to that type of feat as a school doesn't come without its obstacles. And I know that you're sitting in a seat today that has obstacles on a daily basis, if not an hourly basis. When it comes to what you do now and what you've taken away from your coaching background and the obstacles that you overcame when you were playing baseball, how are you using some of those traits into what you're doing today?
Yeah, obstacles, funding, all of those things. That's what we deal with now. And I think it is the work ethic and the dedication and the discipline that gets you to that point. And those are the things you have to work through when you get things placed in front of you. How can we solve this? How can we break this down into smaller things, that if we can solve the smaller things, we can eventually solve the bigger problem. And that's what we try and do. Having a coaching background, I think you get a little bit different perspective on things. You may have a better understanding of where a coach is coming from, or they're dealing with something. You can be like, hey, I dealt with that back when I was coaching, and these are the things that I tried to see if that would work. And I think that's what gives a different lens maybe than maybe some of the other administrators, just not at our institution, but as a whole. Administration, college athletics is a business now, like that's what it is. And then sometimes you see people with business backgrounds and maybe were a student athlete, maybe weren't, and working in college athletics. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think if you have that coaching background, you can give a little bit different maybe perspective on things when you're dealing with whatever the problem is that's placed in front of you. And some of those other people, they can bring a financial background or something that is also a value add. And then at that point, when you've got a bunch of different people looking at it from different lenses, you can normally find a pretty good, successful answer to whatever problem is put in front of you.
The landscape of college that you mentioned has changed significantly, and I've been fortunate enough on the podcast to have players and coaches that are part of large Division I programs that are seeing a lot of shift in conferences and how funds are allocated, NIL, so on and so forth. But when it comes to Metro and RMAC, the future goals of the school, I'd love for you to shed light of the success or path that you've had to this point, Jarrid. What are some of those initiatives, knowing the current college landscape? And if you had a 3 to 5 year forecast of what you would define as success in your role, how would you describe that to the listeners?
I think within my role, I think the biggest things is finding ways to generate revenue for our programs, for our department, leveraging our facilities to do that. If it's through rentals, we run a lot of rentals, a lot of camp. And then my role, I think, mentoring and helping our coaches have as much success as they can, and try and find the resources they need to be at the top of the conference, make regional chances at Elite Eights and Final Fours and all those things. I think that's my biggest thing. I operate all of our facilities and that. So what else can we do to make them better? Even if it's just an eye test and you walk in and you're like, oh, that new signage looks cool. Or if we need to put a new surface down, or making our building where our athletes hang out have more pride in it, and your logos, and just trying to get all of those things done that really make it feel like a top-notch athletic department.
The one thing that comes to mind is you're saying that with fundraising and sports like what I grew up in with tennis, is this kind of lower revenue generating sports. I'm always intrigued by how schools balance the larger revenue generating sports, where Metro has, I know, have had in the past a tremendous basketball program. Obviously, with what you've done with baseball, doesn't have a football team, but there's a lot of revenue coming in from those larger sports. speak to how Metro is able to sustain the amount of sports that it currently has at the D2 level, because my program at the University of Northern Colorado was cut a few years back, and it was a tough pill to swallow. But since COVID, you've seen a lot of those lower revenue generating programs become cut. Put your administrator hat on and share with us, what is it like to try to navigate those decisions of what programs to keep and what programs to maybe move on from?
We're lucky we don't have a lot of those conversations happening. We're, I would say, in theory, we're a smaller athletic department. We have 10 head coaches, 16 total sports when you break up men's and women's versus like cross country, track, indoor, outdoor, all those sports that it comes out to there. And we don't have football. And football is that one sport that it can definitely generate a lot of excitement around your campus and that, but it also costs a lot of money to run. And so we don't have that. We're not going to have it. So that's just a plus within our institution on that side of it, that there's not a lot of money that we're putting into that sport. And then since I've been in this role, the big things is how can we increase operational budgets, increase scholarships. And those are the conversations that we have daily. What can we do to help them? How can we get creative and find ways to generate extra revenue? Like, for instance, it's like within our thing, if we're running rentals and our coaches are running those, like they get a chunk of that money that goes right into their operational budget. And so that's a way for them to generate extra money to be able to do what they want to do. I think at our level, I don't think any program has a blank open check to go do with whatever they want to do. Everybody's got, hey, you get 50,000, 60,000, whatever it is to operate on. And you go above and beyond, you got to go fundraise those dollars to cover what you've gone over. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges is just the increase in what it costs to live these days. Hotel rooms, buses, meals. I remember talking with one of our coaches, and back when I was coaching, I could feed my guys at Chipotle for $9, and now it's $15.
Yeah,
Just
like you guys got Chipotle, we got
Yeah.
Subway sub sandwiches
Yeah.
for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yep.
I'm like a $7 a meal.
Yeah. And those are the things that
Yeah.
we're working through daily is to try and figure that out. And scholarships is so important. That's a difference maker depending on where you fall in that funding structure and how much money you can give, how much the institution costs, and how can you shorten that gap. And so that's always a big one for us. What can we do to increase those scholarship dollars for our programs so they can go offer the kids that they want to offer here? A place like us, like the tweener, you hear that a lot. We lost the kid to whatever Division I school, mid-majors, that sort of thing, where they come to an institution like ours, they could be an All-American every single year while they're here. And those are the kids that we want to get and have our teams run out onto the fields and courts on a every weekend basis. And scholarships is going to be the thing that can get them.
Now, funding, I'm just curious, a lot of it obviously is the operational expense that the school justifies, and then fundraising that you mentioned. Being a metropolitan school, are there funds too coming in from the city to help with some of those initiatives?
Not necessarily on our side of it. The big things that we do all the rental camps, that sort of thing. We do have a partnership with the Colorado Rockies, and we do their 50-50 raffle for them with not just student athletes, but other organizations on our campus. And that's a way to generate some more funds for our department and for our programs. And then just connecting alumni and just your basic donor type of interaction that you have.
Now, Jarrid, before we hopped on, you mentioned that you got to travel to a former player's wedding. And I want to tie together your journey, what you're doing now to help support Metro, and really the why behind it. And I've been fortunate enough to myself as a coach to attend a wedding of a former player. Unfortunately, a couple funerals, some situations where you're able to pick up the phone and shoot a text or a call to someone who's having a birthday on a particular day, and just staying connected to your players the way that you have. When this is all said and done, what is the most memorable part of your journey? And this might be a challenging question to answer because I want to know if it's more of a fulfillment coming from what you've done directly as a coach to impact a player or what you've done as an administrator to impact a player of multiple sports that have an experience of a lifetime while they're attending Metro.
Yeah, that is tough because I think they're two different things. On the player side, the impact of you hear it every once in a while when you see them, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, like when we did X, Y, and Z, and I get it now. I get why there was certain things that are in place, and that because it becomes beneficial for you in the real world. But that's when you've taught the right things and you've grown them as young men, and there's a fingerprint there. If it's the work ethic, or if it it this sucks, but we gotta keep grinding and find an end result to it. That side of it. So that's super impactful. It's fun to see them now that I'm 7 years removed from coaching, like we were talking about, like they're grown men now and they have families and kids and those sort of things, but then they still have all the old stories, and they make fun of me a little bit along the way, which is totally fine. But you get to like listen to them relive some of those glory days and not. And when I was at that wedding, one of the guys came up to me and he just said, he goes, "This is impossible without you." And that's a lot. Like it is, but pretty much as he dove into it, he's like, he's from Colorado Springs and he's from California and he's from Denver and those things. And like none of them would have been friends if they weren't coming here to play baseball and spend 4 years together and that sort of thing. So that part of it's really cool to hear. The administrative side, just what my role is, I have way less touch points with the student athlete, but I do have major touch points with our coaches. And I feel like if I can help them, impact them along the way, that the trickle down effect is going to be to their student athletes. And I think that's the touch point there. So it may not be as black and white as an administrator, the impact on the student athlete, but if you can do whatever it is that needs to be done, if you can sit in a plow and move snow for 6 hours and the athletes aren't out there shoveling for that entire time, and you can take a big brunt of that off their shoulders on a Thursday when they're supposed to play on a Friday, they're more rested, they're ready to get those sort of things. And that to me is where the impact comes in on them. And they may realize it at the point, they may not. But either way, it doesn't matter. What matters is they're playing that Friday and they're getting their games in on that weekend, and not then practice is practice, weights, you got all of those things, but they're all here to play. They're here to play games, and we want to play, especially the snow thing. That's always the big one because we have a bunch of sports that are in season at that point, and you want to be able to get games in, and we have the facility that allows us to put plows out on the field and do those things. And those are the impact that may not be direct right at the student athletes. And that's when transition over to the administrative side, like those are the things that are going to happen. It's hard to truly build that relationship with 18 to 22-year-olds if you're not around them every single day and those sort of things. Like it's just the depth and breadth of it isn't as much. Some of the fun things that I've been able to do as an administrator is we had some student athletes that work for us. When I start to get to know them a little bit more, because then they're off season, they're working game days for us and things like that. And we had a softball player who ended up being an All-American, an academic All-American. She was the female student athlete of our conference, and she worked for us for 3 years, and I know her. And now she's trying to get into college athletics and that. But you do get some moments where you get to have that mentorship. But really, as an administrator, my goal is our coaches and try and make their lives easier, which then is going to make it easier for the student athletes.
Some of the best mentors that I've had in my life, Jarrid, are athletic administrators, directors that have been tied to me and then the high school sector of coaching and just some of the advice that they've given me. My first high school coaching job, I was 22 years old, hired coach a girls tennis team in Littleton, Colorado. And I remember the athletic director very candidly treat every one of these players as if they are your own daughter.
Yep.
And here I am with two daughters now and my son who's 18. And it leads me to a question for you based off of your perspective, because from the coaching background, you've been able to recruit a lot of players that down the road, some of these guys are ending up at a wedding and saying that what you didn't make this possible without it. Man, that's such a powerful thing that you heard that day. But I'd love for you to share, you know, ideal recruit. I know it's been 7 years since you've coached a program, but if you had to lay out some tangibles, knowing that there are a lot of high school athletes that tune into the podcast that are wondering how to separate themselves as a former coach, what were some of the tangibles that you look for?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Obviously, talent matters, but you remove that. But to me, the biggest things is the way you carry yourself, how you're driven, that you take care of yourself, that you're on time, that you go into class, everybody's going to be everywhere on the spectrum of academic. Some are going to be really high, some are going to be somebody like me, who my undergraduate was in above a 3.0. But I went to class every day. I turned in my homework. The ones that are self-driven, the ones that want to put the extra work in, being a good person, having a personality, just those things matter. You're around each other so much when you're a college athlete, and being able to get along with the people you're around. And that's never going to be, pretty and roses all the time, but just being able to not be the energy suck out there on a daily basis and understanding your role. I think that's the hardest part of athlete that's going from high school to college. You might have been the best player on your high school team, but understanding that if you're coming in as a true freshman, you might be hanging out on the bench a little bit more than what you have in the past. Just because the talent level as a whole from top to bottom is greater. And so being able to accept your role and understanding that, and then having your goals and things like that you want to be by the time you're a junior or senior at an institution, and being able to strive to meet those and put the work in that matters. I think that's the biggest thing about college athletics is there are requirements. We, very broadly speaking, when you're in season, you get 20 hours a week with the athletes and you get 1 day off. Well, when you start mixing in weights into there and then your daily practice, are you willing to show up early and leave late and get the extra shots in or the extra swings in or whatever it is that it's a part of your sport that you can work on either by yourself or with a small group of teammates. So you got to be willing to put that extra work in if you want to be great.
So well said, and appreciate you pulling back the curtain on your philosophy when it comes to recruiting. And yes, a lot of moving parts outside of just talent, and tremendous feedback there. And lastly, I don't take lightly that how we connected was from arguably best tennis players that's ever come from Metro States. Josh Grates is someone that has moved on and is now an assistant coach at Washington State and left a tremendous impact both as a player and a coach at Metro. And he speaks emphatically, Jarrid, about you and his relationship during his time there and how much he enjoyed those interactions. But ideal scenario, you talked about being at former players' weddings. You talked about your impact as an administrator. When you think back to your relationship with Josh and your coaches and helping your coaches, what's really your end goal when you're thinking about the experience that you want a coach to have when they're at Metro?
Yeah, an experience that you want to say easy. It's never going to be easy, but as an administrator, we knock down the walls and the things that block them, and that they can focus on what they're supposed to be doing, not developing young student athletes to be future leaders in our country, in our world, those sort of things. And it's development on the field or the court, but it's also development just as your character and as a human being and those growths, and allowing them to be there for those student athletes when they need to be, and they're not worried about X, Y, or Z. Maybe myself or one of our other administrators can take those things off their plate. And I think that's what I would want that to be. You talked about Josh. I love Josh. And he talked about it on your podcast, but he literally was playing 4 months before he became our head coach. No coaching experience, no nothing. And I met Josh, like truly got to like meet him his senior year when they were going to regionals. I traveled with, we're going down to somewhere in Texas, Midwestern.
Okay.
And so we had airport time, we had van time, and I just started talking. I knew who Josh was. I knew who Josh was. I was early in my administrative career too. So I was closer to the coaching side than I am now to the administrative side with time spent. So I didn't know Josh as well as maybe I would have now, just accolades and that. He was playing when I was coaching, and so he had big rates on my player of the week and things like that. But that was fun because I got to spend a lot of time with him because he was learning. He was learning very quickly, going from being a player to a coach and ultimately coaching all the players he just played with. So that's where our relationship started. And then just through the years, just to be able to, I think listening is key. Sometimes coaches just want to listen, somebody to listen to them. When I did a lot of that with Josh, when he was frustrated or trying to figure things out or whatever it was, or I hope he'd say I did a lot of that. That's the thing, just listen. Like that's what I got to do with him and guide him and give him my 2 cents in that. And I learned a lot about tennis during that time. I knew nothing about it. I'll say that. I knew nothing about it. And so that was fun too.
Well, you had a good ready position, I'm sure, in tennis if you played because you were a catcher. And I'm always like, guys, get low like a catcher. But then I'm thinking about your knees. How are your knees holding up these days?
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's a whole different story.
What a tremendous perspective you have, Jarrid. And I appreciate you shedding light on your path from being a former athlete to being a coach to being an administrator to then being an administrator that helps another player of another sport become a coach. Just a fantastic story. I love what you're doing at Metro. I love the grind and determination you have to make it the best experience possible for your athletes and coaches and students that attend the school. And I just am humbled and blessed that you spent a little bit of time with me today, Jerrid Otis, on the BTB Project. Thank you.
Thank you. This was fun. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome. Appreciate you. What a tremendous conversation with Jerrid Otis. There's so many takeaways when it comes to his philosophy of the purpose behind being a coach or the purpose behind being an athletic administration. It's the quality of the individuals that he enjoys seeing come from the programs that he's been a part of, the schools that he's been a part of, the leadership aspects, the camaraderie of teammates that see each other years down the road at a wedding that he's able to attend and be part of that environment. As coaches, it's powerful to see the building blocks of life we can become a part of when we're giving back to sports that mean so much to us. Jarrid's impact at Metro State and the ability to help fundraise and support a program at the Division II level has been truly impactful. And I wish him continued success as he's continuing to mentor and grow in his own craft to pursue his career endeavors. Listen, if Jarrid's story impacted you in today's episode, do me a favor and like and subscribe to the BTB Project. Better yet, send Jarrid's story to a family member, friend, or colleague and tell them why it impacted you. It's these stories in our community that allow us to do life together and to do extraordinary things. As always, I'm proud of each and every one of you. And until next time, take care.
You're told I'll be a harder temptation.